Overcomers unanimous. Powerline number 3. The decisions we make affect us and others around us. A farmer hired a man to work for him. He told him the first task would be to paint the barn. He said should take him about 3 days to complete this job, but the hired man was finished in 1 day. The farmer set him to cut wood, telling him it should require about 4 days to cut all this wood. The hired man finished that in 1.5 days, to the farmer's amazement. The next task was to sort out a large pile of potatoes. He was to arrange them into 3 piles: seed potatoes, food for the hogs, and potatoes that were good enough to sell. The farmer said it was a small job and shouldn't take very long at all. At the end of the day, the farmer came back and found the hired man had barely started the job. "What's the matter here?" the farmer asked. "I can work hard, but I can't make decisions," replied the hired man. So, what is a decision? If you look up the definition of decision, it's often referred to as an act of making up your mind about something, or a position, or an opinion, or a judgment reached after careful consideration. And when people ordinarily consider their own definition of decision making, it is typical that they consider that somehow it is a thinking process with lots of mental activity involved in choosing between different alternatives. But this doesn't include the way some people make their decisions. You may have heard people say, "I have a gut feeling. I know it in my heart. I can feel it in my bones." The true definition probably would be the act of deciding or settling a dispute or a question by giving a judgment, or the act of making up one's mind. But a bigger question is, how does addiction affect your decisions? It will affect you and others. Romans 14:7 says, "For none of us liveth unto himself, and no man dieth to himself." You don't live in a vacuum all by yourself. A major central question that haunts any consideration of addiction is, why do people who have developed addiction obsessively and compulsively make decisions to seek and use drugs even after the drugs don't produce the pleasure that they used to? Why do individuals who are addicted to drugs persist in behaviors that damage their health or corrodes the quality of their lives? How can they make such poor decisions? One of the hallmarks of addiction is the compulsive seeking and use of drugs, even in the face of mounting harmful results. Addicted individuals repeatedly make self-destructive decisions which affect themselves and others. For example, choosing immediate gratification, such as relief from the craving, despite the choice's long-term negative issues, which include loss of health, employment, the quality of life, relationships, finances. See, Deuteronomy 30:19 says, "I call heaven and earth to record this day against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, that both thou and thy seed may live." Choose life in your decisions. These decisions are made in the brain's frontal region, where benefits and risks are weighed and choices are made. Alcohol and drugs disrupt this thinking, the thinking regions of the frontal part of your brain, and lead to destructive decisions that are characterized by the addiction itself. See, addictive logic is choosing high rewards despite high costs. Many substance-dependent individuals appear to exhibit a decision-making impairment and to make choices based on the prospects for immediate benefit rather than on future consequences, whether those consequences be positive or negative. Usually we make decisions in an irrational way. That is, we usually make decisions on emotions or logic, not always on fact. See, the addiction makes the decision. The addiction makes the decision. Here's some examples. Not to go to rehab or get involved in working a program, or drinking to avoid raging at other people, or using alone to escape for a while, or just to drink, not to feel. Also, we rarely realize that our decisions, although personal, have an effect on others around us. That everything we do in our lives affects practically everyone else in some way, shape, or form, one way or another. The habit makes the decision. The addiction influences your decisions. These are decision points. There are times every day that you could consider a decision point. Events, situations, where you decide a course of action or a response. Some decisions are minor. The decision to buy a Frosty or a Big Mac. Some other decisions appear minor and can be decided on without much thought. However, even the smallest of decisions has the capacity to affect many other people. It's estimated that addiction, alcoholism, affects at least 7 other people other than the alcoholic. The Bible says that in the 3rd and 4th generation after us, they can also be affected by our decisions. You run a red light. How does that affect others? What do you think a DUI costs? The average cost is $10,000. That will affect you and others. We often make decisions to meet our immediate need or our perceived need. But in reality, even a personal decision often affects more than just the immediate and more than just you. It affects others. When I was about 13 years old, I was in the local pool room eating hot dogs. The best hot dogs, as a matter of fact. When I came out, several friends, quote, kids, were messing around with my bike, breaking it. There was a fight. I didn't realize it. I didn't think about it. I just reacted. I punched the kid a couple times. The problem was I hit him in the head, broke my hand. Never thought about that decision. Never thought that that decision would have any kind of effect on anybody else. But it was baseball season, and I couldn't play. I was the catcher. They didn't have a catcher. That decision, that irrational reaction, affected many other people. It may also be true that there are no harmful decisions or potentially harmful decisions for oneself that do not affect others close by you. Decisions should not necessarily be made for others or for self, but what is the next right thing? When you decide to drink, how does that affect you or others? When you decide not to drink, how does that affect you or others? You probably feel that if I isolate myself, I'm not hurting anyone else but myself. But that is simply not true. It may be true that there are 2 sides to every question or every decision, but it is also true that there are 2 sides to a sheet of flypaper, and it makes a big difference to the fly which side he chooses. See, no man is an island. Romans 14:7. For none of us liveth unto himself, and no man dieth unto himself. But do you want to cut yourself off from your real friends, your family, your spouse, your parents, your kids, your best buddies, your sister, your brother, everyone you once loved or cared about? Can you remember how that felt? Or are you just numb? What about the rest of your reality? Where you work, learn, play, eat, go to church, wake up. What kind of shape is your lifestyle in? Do you have money in the bank, a warm bed, a car, a license? Can you look your friends in the eye? Can you go to the mirror, look at yourself and say, you're okay? Does anyone still love you? Do you care? Does anybody care? Or are you an island surrounded by an addictive sea? Can you survive all alone? Can you always get your high? Powerline number 3. The decisions we make affect us and others around us.